Hello and welcome to Game Theory. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon is here. We're going to talk about Joel Embiid's extension with the Philadelphia 76ers. We're going to talk a little bit about AJ Griffin stepping away from basketball. And then we're going to talk about the top 10 defenses that we think will succeed in the NBA this season. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this gonna be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? Our high school team that I helped coach lost a heartbreaker on Friday. And so I had to go get kind of my comfort food, my comfort fast food. Any guesses what my comfort food is after a tough loss, after a tough coaching loss, Sam? Any guesses?
Well, I'm trying to decide what I think you have in Kansas.
Okay.
More than anything.
Okay. It's chill. We have all of the fast food places you would imagine for the most part. It is a little bit of a drive. It is 20 minutes.
Okay, that's not as bad as I thought it would be.
Okay, so here's the difference. It's 20 miles, but those 20 miles only take 20 minutes. So a lot of people in the city will be like, oh my gosh, it's 20 miles to McDonald's? Or yeah, I'm like, yeah, it also takes you 20 minutes to get McDonald's, even though it's only 3 miles away. So it's not that bad.
Okay, so I was going to say Taco Bell first, but it sounds like it's McDonald's.
It is not McDonald's because I wouldn't have given it away. It is absolutely Taco Bell. That's a great guess.
Yeah. Taco Bell is always the best. Like, I feel bad about myself. Food. I feel bad about myself. I want to punish myself with food that is going to feel amazing for the 12 minutes that I'm eating it. And then I'm going to feel like human garbage afterward and just wallow in my self-pity.
Yep, that was 100%. I may have included Cayman Jack with it whenever I got home, and yeah, that's my what is yours?
Oh man, I don't know. That's a good question.
Sam,
I like to get a McFlurry from McDonald's. That's probably that's a big one. What will I used to eat Taco Bell a lot. That would probably be the one it used to be.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't feel like it's probably that, or there's like I call it knockoff Burger King here. It's basically the same thing. It's called Hungry Jack's.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would say Burger King would actually probably be the one.
Got you. I also, before we get started, I would be remiss not to give a shout out to my beautiful wife whose birthday is today. And so shout out Ranny and everything she does, allowing me to do the things I do.
Every time that you do stuff like this, I just want to stab you because tell me ahead of time that it is your wife's birthday and I won't make you record. That's the key here.
No, she is cool with it. She had a very relaxing day. I had a football meeting today. We have football meetings every Sunday. The kids were playing, so she got to lay there, read her book. She is happy, but I needed to give her a shout out still. So
yeah, shout out to Ranny. Sorry. Good Lord.
Yeah. It's a weird name. Everybody, R-A-N-I. People pronounce it wrong if they've never heard it. So it's a tough one.
I love it. Okay. Let's talk about Joel Embiid to start. Joel Embiid signs a 3-year, $193 million extension. My read on the way that this is going to work is they're going to rip up what is currently his player option on his 3rd year remaining on his deal and tack on 3 seasons to the remaining 2 years that he has left. That's going to give him essentially a 5-year, $301 million contract remaining. Bryce, give me your take on this, because I think it's a interesting decision that they're probably backed into a corner in terms of having to make it, but there's downside, and it's a complicated discussion that I'd love to hear from you on.
Yeah, so I hate that I always kind of default to this answer where I'm like, what else were they going to do? We kind of had this conversation with Jamal Murray as well, right? Where the Nuggets, like, what were they going to do? Let Jamal Murray walk? Were they not going to pay him? I think this one, like, it's Joel Embiid. Like, you've built everything around this guy, and you have two other stars in place to play with him. So now are you not going to keep him around? This is his age 30 season. So we're talking 31, 32, 33, 34, age 34 season in that final year when it's going to be 70 million. That's a player option. It's 34% of the cap. I think what makes me nervous, Sam, is 3 years from now, when Paul George will be in his age 37 season, you're committing $120 million to Joel Embiid and Paul George. Now, Paul George's is a player option, but can't see why he wouldn't, exercise that option. It's just a lot of money. Like, you're very much locked into this trio. There could be worse things than being locked into Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey. I just wonder if 2 years from now, we're gonna be like, man, that's a lot of money to two guys that aren't playing a ton of games every year, that in Embiid's case, into his 30s, Paul George's case, getting into middle to latter 30s. It just makes me a little uncomfortable, but I guess those are tomorrow's problems, and you're not going to worry about it.
Well, yeah. So in Embiid's case, right? Like, Joel turned 30 in March, and he is now signed for an additional 5 years. Does anybody on planet Earth really think that Joel is going to be like playing MVP level, max level basketball at 35 years old? I think probably not, if we're being realistic about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But I think there's a chance that he probably is still okay at 33 years old. And if that is the case, you can't actually give him a contract. Like, you can't offer him 1 year.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just be like, oh yeah, we'll guarantee you're, another year on top of this. We'll tack on a full year. You can't, like, you have to max him at this point. He is the MVP of the league previously. He was phenomenal up until he got hurt last season. There's just not really a realistic scenario where Joel is like, oh yeah, like, I'm good tacking on one extra year. This is the time where he has the leverage to be able to go and get everything that he's capable of. Right?
Yeah.
But also, Joel has 2 years plus player option left on his deal coming into this extension. If you don't give him the money right now, or coming into the season, or throughout the season, whatever, you end up in a spot where he's then potentially entering next summer as an expiring contract. After you just signed Paul George, you have Tyrese Maxey, and you don't really have any cap flexibility moving forward because both of those guys are on max level contracts. So just functionally, they were kind of backed into this contract where it feels like they absolutely unequivocally had to do this. Unless you were deciding, you know what, we think Joel is not going to be very good for his age 32, 33 season, and we don't want to be tied to this core for 2 more years, after 2 more years. So maybe that was a calculus that was possible here, but that's a hard calculus at the end of the day.
Is that possible? Like, is there can we make that argument? Because I don't think you can with the Paul George contract. I think it makes it hard to do that when you just gave Paul George the deal you gave him. But if you take Paul George out of the equation, is there an argument to say just get the next 3 years out of Joel Embiid and then cut bait? Like, just you get year 30, 31, 32. That would have given you what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 plus years of Joel Embiid. Just feel good about that and move on. Is there any argument to them having just done that?
I guess, but you still have Paul George locked in.
No, that's something like it take Paul George out of the equation. Like, I don't think you can do it once Paul's signed to this deal.
Yeah, but you also had to sign Paul if you can get Paul George, you have to do that.
Agreed.
I think. what are you going to run back Tobias Harris? Or are you going to run back like a few other guys here? But Joel his injury situation is such that I feel like you have to always have like that third star there with him.
Yeah.
Because when Joel misses games, you need the second star to be able to play with Tyrese. So to me, it's very complicated. Their situation from a team building perspective is very difficult. That's why I think they had to do this at the end of the day. Like you just kind of have to go for it and say, well, we're probably not going to like this deal. And what would that be? 2027, 28 and 2028, 29.
Yeah, I think 27, 28 is the year, Sam. I think that's the year where it started to make me uncomfortable because you're age 37, Paul George on that player option, and Joel's a little older on 64 million. I think that's the year where this thing could be a little rough, but it's Paul George on an expiring. Embiid has 1 year plus a player option. Maybe you just have to survive a year if they have deteriorated the way we think is possible. And I think it's fair to think that's possible with both of these guys when we're talking about 3 years from now.
Yeah. So like the option is just not doing it. And, saying to Joel, hey, like you have what was it? It was like, it was something like wild in terms of what the number was. It might've been like 50, 58, 59 that was due to him, something in
On
that
the player option.
On the player option. Yeah. Like something in that
Yeah.
ballpark. So you could have just said to him like, hey, turn that down if you want to. But I think somebody probably would have paid him for 2 years in that season. And thus like they probably would have had to try and pay him. I don't know. This one's complicated. At the end of the day, I don't have an issue with them doing this because you're signing a guy that is 30 years old, who is coming off of like MVP caliber play at the very least. Maybe he didn't win MVP last year, but he was looking like a potential MVP candidate before he got hurt. And you've built this entire thing around him. You've made this decision to build this thing around Joel and Tyrese and Paul. I think you have to pay him. I think that's the corner you've backed yourself into at this point, and you've set it up to where it's a decision that just kind of has to be made.
I think this will be a really interesting test case in team building under the new CBA and all that. Those 3 guys are going to take up over 90% of the cap for the next few years. And so it's a trio that I don't think you can find a better trio in the NBA, at least right now. Proven, I guess, but can you build around the margins? Can you win on the margins whenever you have 3 guys taking up that much cap space? I think it'll be a really interesting test case.
Yeah. Even in 2027, 28, those guys are taking up like 88.6% of the cap, right? This is like the antithesis of the way that a team like Denver is building around Nikola Jokic, right?
Yep.
Philly is just like throwing money at the problem, right? Denver is trying to get cheaper, trying to get a little bit more flexible at the end of the day. So I'm interested to see how all of the different team building ideas come together in the time of the second apron being as difficult as it is to navigate, and in this new collective bargaining environment where team building is obviously going to get more complicated for everybody.
And I mean, the Celtics are going to find themselves in this situation as well in 25, 26. Their top 3 guys are going to be over 90. That'll be Jalen, Jason, and Drew that year. And then obviously they have KP and Derek White as well. So we're going to see a few teams go through. Obviously the Suns are beyond even what the Sixers are with theirs, but it will just be interesting. Can you do it with 3 guys making this level of money? How will other teams navigate that? You kind of shocked me a couple weeks ago when you brought up the Thunder and how eventually over the next few years, they're going to find themselves in this situation. Like they may have to watch, okay, how are the Sixers? They're in a completely different situation though, with draft picks and young players and the mechanisms to build out their roster. But, it will just be interesting as teams have these level of players. Can they do it with 3 guys making 90+% of the cap?
So there's just a small difference though between Oklahoma City and between Philly, right? So the Philly side, Paul George and Joel Embiid alone will be making in 2026, 27, 67%
Yeah,
of the
that's
cap.
true. Yeah,
Let's
Chet
call it,
and
right?
J-Dub won't be on. They'll still be on the rookie max. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, unless one of them makes all NBA, at what point they will jump to 30%. But they have 2 years to make all NBA,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's possible. Like I actually think either of them could do it, if I'm being completely honest. Maybe not. Honestly, like this year, I guess, is like low degree of likelihood, but plausible. Next year, I think, is like very doable potentially for those two. And I'm sure that the Thunder will put the language in their contracts to say you get the
Yeah.
jump up to
Escalator.
30%
Yeah.
because those guys have earned it. But even then, even if they both end up in that circumstance where they both make all NBA along with Shea, which feels very unlikely, at that point, like Shea is still at 35, and then those guys are at 30 and 30 each. I guess that then they'd be at 95% of the cap for 3 guys, and the Sixers would be at 90 that season. So that would be like fairly close, but that's just like very unlikely to me. And the antithesis of that is that you have Shea, who you're hoping to keep at 30 to 35% of the max or of the salary cap. I'm sorry, and then hopefully you have these other 2 guys at 25%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So they don't quite hit the same thresholds. That's true. Yep.
Totally. So it'd be like 85% for
Yep.
3 guys.
Yep.
At the start of their deals, and that's before the cap rises and continues to rise. So that percentage goes down and down and down.
Yep.
So it's
not-
the Thunder are potentially in a slightly better position, but they're potentially in a slightly worse position. The difference, though, again, between where the Thunder and the 76ers are is that those guys are all in their early 20s or early to mid 20s in Shea's case, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Maxi's 24, I believe.
Yep.
24, 23 maybe. And then the other 2 guys are 30 years old and 34 years old, 35 maybe even in Paul's case. So it's a harder like situation to navigate in terms of like age gaps, in terms of figuring out who's going to be your best players moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's definitely not 1-to-1. I was trying to think of teams who might fall into that 3 different players making that level of the cap. So
yeah, I mean, it's there's a reason that a lot of teams aren't doing it. It's because it's very difficult to deal with on the salary cap front. I mean, Boston is the obvious example. Like Boston has both Jalen and Jason locked in at 33 and 32% of the cap, and then they have Drew Holiday is theoretically locked in right now at 20%, and like we'll see how long he's on Boston, right? But that's 3 years away. In 3 years, Boston has Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Drew Holiday locked in at, I think it's like 88, 89% of the cap. So very similar to what Philadelphia has.
Yep.
So there are teams that are doing it. It's just complicated. And then on top of it, Boston also has Derek White at 18%. So that's another, they're up over 105, 110 for 4 guys. Yep. Okay. Anything else on Joel? I mean, I feel like we just kind of shit on this deal a little bit for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but at the end of the day, like Joel's a great player. And he's, it's just all about, we need to see Joel get to a playoff run like fully healthy, and hopefully Paul George helps them be able to do that. But that's what it comes down to for me is, can Philly get Joel Embiid to the start of a playoff run completely healthy? And until we see that, it's tricky to build around Joel, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe in the way we shit on it was we didn't give it the positivity of how good he is in this trio and all of that. I mean, we talked about how good the trio is, I guess. So we gave it some love there. It was more so just like, all contracts have a chance of aging poorly, right? They all do. But if you look 3 years from now at the Sixers books, at the very top at least, there's a chance that you have a 37, 38-year-old Paul George, a 33, 34-year-old Joel Embiid, who has proven to have injuries. That's a 7-foot big man. like there's a chance that I think it's fair for us to discuss that could look not great 3 years from now. Does that mean you don't do it? No, but it's just saying that for a 3-year run and chance to add a title over the next 3 years, which you would take, you may have 1 or 2 years on the back end that are a little bit rough, or you're trying to get off a contract or something like that because of that. Would you make that trade? Yes. If you get a 3-year title window with this big three, you take it, even if it means maybe a year or so that's not great on the back end. So,
Yeah, and in this case with Joel, obviously as well, the question is with Joel, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, all these guys, how open is the title window? I'm not saying it's not open. It's just we don't know yet how open the title window is because these guys haven't played together. This is like an entirely new team that they've built around them. It might be like wide open. Like it might be like we find that Tyrese Maxey is taking a leap into like the Damian Lillard zone, and Paul George is still going to be Paul George for 2 or 3 more years, and Joel is Joel. And they really have a shot to win like 58 games this year and be like strongly in the title mix. That is possible for the Sixers. I don't want to slight that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's just that there's ups and downs.
The other thing,
right?
I guess you can look at this 2 different ways. The books are also very clean outside of those 2 guys, or 3 guys, excuse me. Caleb Martin did get a 4-year deal with a player option on the end, but those are the only guys you have on the books, 26, 27, 27, 28, outside of the guys they drafted in Jared McCain, Adem Bona, Ricky Council a couple years ago. So like the books are very open where, if you did get in a situation where Paul George, has 1 year left, he's an expiring deal, you need to get off that contract. Like there's probably a way to get off that expiring deal and build out your roster around, with somebody else, with Joel and Maxey or whatever. So the books are clean outside of those guys.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a good point. Look, Joel's an unbelievable player. We just want Joel to be healthy. Hopefully the addition of Paul George, Caleb Martin, the continued growth of Tyrese Maxey allows him to get to the point where he can get through a regular season. Maybe it allows him to play 65 games of full health this year. Maybe it allows him to play 50 games throughout the season, and they're able to get through to the playoffs at like the 4 seed or the 3 seed or whatever, and just be able to run, right? And just be able to go at that point. But this contract has more downside risk than most of these deals that are signed, given that you're signing a large 7-foot human being to 3 additional years into his mid-30s, when this large 7-foot human being has also dealt with injuries in his past.
Yeah, and I think Tyrese Maxey is huge for that team, because if he can really lead the charge in the regular season, that would be huge for Paul George and Joel Embiid in this team. And then I'm so sorry. That was a really big sneeze, and I didn't want to do it into the mic, Sam.
I love it.
I apologize. So if you're listening on audio, that's what was the break there. So, but that he's huge for them in the regular season. And I want these guys, this East could be so much fun, Sam, with this reigning champion Boston Celtics team, this Knicks team that brought in Mikal Bridges. If the Bucks figure it out and then the Sixers team comes together, that's 4 teams that could be a lot of fun competing against each other in the play. And I didn't even mention the Pacers. It would make that conference so competitive.
Yep. So our take overall is a deal that is not without downside, but one that probably had to be made for Philadelphia at the end of the day.
That's right.
Okay. Let's move real quick. I want to talk about AJ Griffin just very, very quickly. So AJ Griffin has decided to step away from basketball. Obviously, the Houston Rockets traded for AJ Griffin this past season or this past offseason on the second day of the draft, right? I've seen some people question, what did the Rockets know? What did, Atlanta know? Everything like that. And I kind of just want to talk through, like AJ Griffin, we hope AJ is really, really healthy and happy, and is dealing well from a mental health perspective. What I will say is, like, if you go through AJ's, recent past, right? AJ Griffin is somebody that has had a pretty real openness to discuss that, he has dealt with some depression, right? If you go to christianpost.com, you can find a eulogy that he gave, I believe, during a funeral for his nephew, I think it is, where his nephew passed, unfortunately, when he was 2 years old. And, AJ just openly said, I'm an NBA player and most of you guys know me, but I'd rather have Jesus than have basketball. I was once full of depression, anxiety, and fear, and I struggled with porn addiction. I struggled with mental battles in my mind where they left me restless at night, and I stayed up at night, just crying. So he is a player that has struggled quite a bit, I think, early in his career to adjusting, potentially to the NBA lifestyle. And, people have asked this question, how much did Houston know? I mean, look, this article was published, July 24th, 2023. This is all out there in the public. The other thing is, if you go to AJ Griffin's TikTok, Twitch channels, you go to his Twitter page, right? AJ has clearly found some interesting things that, believe whatever you want to believe, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, is my opinion. But, for instance, he tweeted on, what is this date? August 11th, 2023. If you call yourself a follower of Christ, you shouldn't be going to any Beyonce concerts or any concerts that promote Satan. If you go to his TikTok page, you'll see a lot of references to the incoming rapture, for instance. So he clearly has found some interesting things on the internet that he seems to connect with. And again, like, as long as he's not harming anybody, is what it is. But if you believe that the rapture is coming, you might not care as much about basketball.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
That's my opinion. That's not what anything he said, but that's, stands to reason, right?
Yep.
All of these things were very public. All of these things, like, if as somebody who talks to NBA teams and talks to people that do intel research for NBA teams, I can tell you I have not talked to the Houston Rockets particularly about what they knew or didn't know about AJ Griffin, but I've known about this for over a year now, basically. And if I know about it, the odds are that the people who do the snooping and, do all of the intel work for NBA teams also knew about it. Obviously, there is a difference between knowing that AJ is diving into some rabbit holes and, as he said, dealing with a pornography addiction and quitting playing basketball, right? That there's a difference there in terms of, one thing leading to the other. But to me, this deal was always just like a bet on hoping that, more than anything, changing AJ Griffin's situation would lead to a more positive result. At the end of the day, I didn't see much at Summer League that showed that AJ looked great as a basketball player. So it didn't seem like the change of scenery had really done a whole lot necessarily to adjust his game, which needs some work at the end of the day. He's a shooter, but he needs to improve basically everything else. Like, he can really shoot the basketball, but needs to improve his ball handling, needs to improve his decision making, passing, playmaking. And it seems like, at least, maybe he was not as focused on that. That's my speculation based off of his social media platforms. I would speculate that he may not have been as focused on basketball as he was on spreading the word of Christ, which if he wants to spread the word of Christ, I'm all for it. But I just say that I think that the Rockets very likely went into this relationship with AJ Griffin having their eyes open on this stuff, and they believed that it was worth the bet of figuring out that, you know, it was worth the bet of the 44th overall pick from a talent perspective with AJ Griffin to see if he could, you know, to see what was going on with AJ and see if he could refocus on basketball a little bit or whatever it is, right? The change of scenery idea may be changing some things.
Yeah, if maybe he would decide he wanted to prioritize basketball. And I want to make it clear, we're not saying it's like anything wrong with the fact that he's chosen not to prioritize basketball, as long as, I think you said it perfectly, you know, do what you want.
It's and to be clear, like, it's clear that he has chosen not to prioritize basketball because he is stepping away from basketball.
Yeah. And like you said it perfectly, as long as he's not hurting anybody else, then and what he's doing is safe and all of that, prioritize what you want, you know, like do what you want in terms of that. And so, like, yeah, as long as he is mentally in a good space, emotionally in a good space, I know it's hard. Like, even for someone like me and you, anybody, it's hard to see a professional athlete walk away, right? Because you see that life and you're like, I would do anything for that.
Yeah.
Like, Sam, we all, most of us grew up wanting to be professional athletes, whether it's in the NBA, WNBA, you know, Olympics, whatever. And so to see someone who had the chance and the opportunity right there not take it, I think is hard. But they're still humans. They still deal with all the same things the rest of us deal with. And I know when I stepped away just from college basketball, like I ended up having to go and get some help to figure out who am I? What is my identity if I'm not a basketball player? Because that's all I was for the first 22 years of my life. And it led to some not great things whenever it was over. Like, what do I do now? And so it's not always easy. And so I will never judge someone, again, as long as what they're choosing to do and partake in is safe and not hurting others in any way.
Yeah.
Like, then, okay. Like, it sucks. I hate that he hasn't been able to take advantage of that. But if he would like to prioritize his time and his energy somewhere else, and in some ways I respect it. Like, if you're not putting basketball first, then don't take the paycheck and, you know, from an organization and waste it. You know what I mean? Like, so I would love to see AJ be successful in the NBA, but if that's not where he wants to take his life and he's in a good mental and social and emotional space, then who am I to think anything else?
Yeah. And like, we hope that that's the case.
Yes.
Based off of his decisions. You know, I don't speak to AJ Griffin. I don't know what's going on with AJ Griffin necessarily, but I can see from his very public social media platforms and from his very public statements that he has made that he is a person that has gone through some things at this point early in his NBA career. You know, a guy that obviously too, like, dealt with a lot of injuries in high school, dealt with an injury last year. Like, it's easy to fall into spirals that way as well. Right. So, you know, is a player that was like a 5-star prospect, was seen as a top 5 player in his class for many, many years. And then all these things happen to you, you know, it's not the easiest thing in the world.
I don't know this about AJ at all, but I will say, like, going through major injuries like that can really put you in a tough place. And again, I don't mean to always equate because I never played at that level, but when I tore my ACL, it was very isolated. I was very lonely because you don't practice with your team. You just go in rehab. Like, me and the athletic trainer got really close because I spent so much time with him every day, but it wasn't with my teammates. I showed up at a different time. Like, all of that, it's different. And, you know, at the NBA level, you know, wherever, like, it can be difficult because you're not getting to play the games or you're not getting to practice. You know, it can be tough. I've seen it with high school kids, all of that. So those injuries, I'm not saying that's specifically what's happened here, but in general, that can be a tough place to be in whenever you are out and injured and just quote unquote doing rehab to try to get back.
Yeah. Okay. But, you know, to answer, I've seen some people ask the question, you know, did Houston know that there were, you know, things going on ahead of time? You know, look, again, I haven't spoken to Houston, probably don't aggregate this, but I given that I found it very easily after 5 minutes of looking at his social media platforms.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel quite confident saying that the Rockets knew what they were getting into here and just made a calculated gamble that, his talent, even with all of the other stuff, was worth the 44th overall pick, essentially, is what it comes down to. Okay. We're going to get into top 10 defenses. But before we do that, Bryce, we got a quick little message from our friends over at Mando. Look, I recently got back from my trip over to the Gold Coast and the NBL Blitz. And let me tell you, packing is an absolute nightmare. I never know what to pack. I either bring too much or not enough. My suitcase always ends up over the weight limit, literally, for that trip. I can have a real story here, like a very significant, substantial story. I ended up having to check my bag in Gold Coast coming back to Melbourne because it was over the weight limit. Jetstar is like a total catastrophe. And they tried to tell me that like it's a threat for like the aircraft if they have like a heavy bag in the overhead.
Well, it'll throw off the weight distribution. Like those planes, there's no way they can handle a few extra pounds on one side of the plane. I'm sure they're not built to withstand that.
What are we doing here? Look, and as always, one of my biggest dilemmas in those moments are deciding hygiene products to take. Do I take tiny bottles of shampoo, face wash, body wash, everything like that? Where do I get those? It's just a total mess. But the solution that's made my life generally easier is Mando's 4-in-1 acidified cleansing bar. This 5-ounce bar is a game changer. It works as a shampoo, face wash, body wash, deodorant. And if you need a shaving lather, it's perfect for that too. That makes it a 5-in-1 product, technically. It's clinically proven to control odor for 24 hours. Mando's 4-in-1 acidified cleansing bar is formulated with a gentle alpha hydroxy acid that stops odor at the source. Regular soap can't compete because its pH is too high. Look, I'm not a scientist, but trust me, it just works. Doctor developed it. I can tell you it stops odor from getting through. This bar simplified my hygiene routine and was the only thing I really needed to pack. Think of all the room that I had in my suitcase for an extra pair of shoes, tuxedo, snacks. Unfortunately, I still overpacked in this circumstance. It was a bad choice on my part. Look, it comes in 3 cologne quality scents: Mount Fuji, Bourbon Leather, or Pro Sport. And guess what? I have a special offer for you. New customers are going to get $5 off Mando's best-selling starter pack with the code GAMETHEORY, GAMETHEORY, at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. What do I love most about Mando? It's safe to use anywhere on your body. Pits, grundle, belly buttons, butt cracks, you name it. Created by a doctor, it's powerful enough to stop the toughest body odors, but gentle enough for every crevice. Plus, it's aluminum-free, baking soda-free, cruelty-free, dye-free, and vegan. Mando starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, and free shipping. So don't miss out. Use that code GAMETHEORY at shopmando.com to get $5 off of your starter pack. Simplify your travel and stay fresh with Mando. Okay, Bryce, before we get into top 10 defenses, actually, I'll ask you, do you want to do top 10 defenses or NBL stuff first?
Yeah, let's knock the NBL out so then we can go top 10 defenses and then into trivia.
So from an NBA draft perspective, the NBL has 6 players that we've been tracking, and as we get closer and closer here, I've been thinking for next Sunday, maybe we do an early mock draft.
Ooh, okay.
Bryce?
Okay.
Maybe.
Maybe.
We'll see. That could be a fun one. But as we get closer and closer to college season starting, we're having these European leagues and Australian leagues start now. For instance, Ben Seraph played today. He had 21 points. Nolan Traore had a bit of a rough game to start his professional season over in France. Where I want to start is with the NBL, because we've actually got like a decent sample of these games now, where all teams have played 4 games, 3 preseason games, 1 regular season game. I was there for the NBL Blitz, got to see these teams up close. Hoop Fest happened over in Perth. A few NBL personnel got there. I think something like 30 to 35 NBL people or NBA people were out here in Australia over the course of the last 2 to 3 weeks, basically. The guy that has made the biggest impression so far is Alex Toohey.
Yeah.
I believe that you've watched a couple of the Blitz games, right?
Yeah, I've watched him. I just didn't see the most recent game. That's in the queue right now.
Yeah, he was quite good yesterday. So he had 20 plus points in his first 2 Blitz games. He sat out the first Blitz game with just a very minor ankle thing where if it was a regular season game, he would have played. But because it was a preseason game, they were like, we're not going to mess with this. He had 20 points in his first 2 NBL Blitz games. Then yesterday, has 15 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. It was a plus 29 or something like that in this game. Their starting lineup was absolutely outstanding. Their starting lineup's really, really fun in Sydney this year. The jumper looks fantastic. He drilled 3 of 5 from 3. It looks super pure. I watched them practice. I can tell you that he's getting real close on some of these no dip corner threes in terms of getting it off real quick. The shot looks super pure right now. Every single time that I see him, I am a buyer in Alex Toohey being a very high level shooter is where I'm at.
Yeah. I thought it looked really good in the games I've watched. It's funny you bring up the dip because that was my notes going back to even last year. Is I thought the mechanics looked good. I thought it was a little bit slow and he needed to eliminate the dip. So obviously that was something he recognized in his coaches and, whoever he works with. And so if that's something he can do and that, obviously right now he's shooting ridiculous. He's shooting 69% from 3 right now. He's not going to shoot that all year, but if he ends up shooting 38 to 40% on the season on 4 attempts, I wouldn't be shocked based on how it looks so far. And then you combine that with a lot of the other stuff he does in terms of cutting and making quick passing decisions and some of the versatility, the offensive rebound anticipation, maybe a little bit of versatility on the defensive end. It's a really interesting wing forward all around package that he could put together.
So one thing that he struggled with last year was dealing with contact. And we saw that a little bit. You'll see in the first game that he played in the regular season against Adelaide yesterday. I felt like we saw a little bit of that pop up. He went 2 of 7, I think, in the from 2-point range. He got bumped a little bit yesterday. His frame looks I can tell you from having stood next to him and talked to him last season to having stood next to him, talked to him this season. His shoulders, his arms, his chest, he looks way stronger, way bigger. And his lower half looks way stronger. He is still maintaining that the same level of lateral quickness to me that he had last year. And I thought he was pretty valuable as a versatile defender in the NBL. I have some questions on how that'll look. The name that I think of when I watch him kind of is a beloved Detroit Piston. Simone Fontecchio, baby. It's a similar kind of mindset to what that is. It's a very similar idea to what Toohey, I think, can be to what Tech is for Detroit and for what he was with Utah.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this Twitter interaction. I think did somebody say Joe Ingles? Did somebody say Joe Ingles?
Yeah, it's not Inglesy at all. It's not remotely close to Ingles.
Yeah,
Ingles is more of a point forward.
Yeah, he more of a passer. I think I put Dean Wade in my stuff from last year. Maybe that's underselling him.
I like that one too.
Okay, is that one? Dean's a little bit taller, I think, than Toohey. I did the quick math here. 29% from 2s through these 3 games is Alex Toohey. So struggling a little bit from there. He's shooting, I mentioned, 69% from 3, and that dumps down to 54% overall from the field. So he's got to figure that out. He's kind of an awkward finisher, but lots of times he does end up making it, based on stuff from last year. So that will be something to track throughout the season. I thought he did move pretty well in the Blitz game I saw. And then one thing that always stands out to me when I watch him, he's an awesome communicator defensively, Sam. And that's something I've tried to really hone in on as I've talked to more scouts and kind of grown my network. That's something they bring up to me a lot is, oh, I could hear this guy talking, or I went and watched this guy and he didn't communicate. I couldn't hear him talking. And so that really stands out to me every time I watch Toohey play.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Toohey. I would have him as a first rounder right now for what it's worth. 6'8" with a 6'11" wingspan. He came in at like a 9-foot standing reach at Hoop Summit in 2023. I'm gonna guess it's more like 8'10" if I'm just being completely transparent. I don't think it's quite 9 foot. If it is 9 foot, I mean, my goodness, like that is, if you're that good of a shooter and you can move, like he might go in the top 20 if like he really comes in that big and has the season that I think he's going to have. Like the way I've thought of it with Toohey is he's a better prospect than Bobby Clinton. He's the same age as Bobby was last year. He's going to be more productive than Bobby was last year in the NBL. Like I can just tell you, I feel quite confident of that. And they're similar, 6'8", 6'11" wingspan. Bobby's maybe a little bit bigger, a little bit more flexible, you could say. But I don't know how functional like Bobby's ball skills actually are on an NBA court. And I trust Alex more on defense than I do with Bobby.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. So I really think that Toohey I think he's a first rounder. Yeah. I do.
Yeah. I mean, if he continues to shoot it well, and show that.
That's where I'm at. Okay. The next guy that's worth talking about is Rocco Zikarsky. So Rocco is going to be Tyrell Harrison's backup. The first thing I want to say is like Alex Toohey is 2 years older than Rocco, right? That's just, it actually might even be like 2.5 years older than Rocco. So when we compare productivity and everything like that, Rocco's is going to be lower than what Alex's is. That's the reality of the situation. You shouldn't expect any different. I think Rocco is going to play in the NBA. I feel quite confident of that. He played like 6 or 7 minutes, I think, yesterday.
Yeah.
Those minutes weren't particularly good, I didn't think. You know, he has dealt with like a couple of little minor ankle injuries in the preseason again. So like we're probably not seeing him at full blast yet necessarily. He's 7'3". I think he moves fairly well for being 7'3". Block shots, has the kind of mindset where he does want to like dunk on people, really has that kind of aggressive mentality that I love and appreciate from bigs. Like he's not afraid to be physical, has kind of high hips where you can get moved around a little bit, I think, too easily. But I would expect that we will see better from Rocco throughout the season. I will also note, I'm like not yet 1,000% convinced he's a 2025 prospect. Well, let me rephrase. I don't know what their plans are. Maybe they're just like 100% going pro this year and that's it. But I think what I would say is I'm not yet convinced that being a 2025 draft prospect is what is best for his long-term development. Maybe is the way to put it. If only because I think he is going to be an NBA player. I think that his tools just are what they are, and he has the right mentality to do it. Like he's going to continue to fill out his frame and get stronger, but he's only going to be 18 on draft day. He is so young, and he has a very immature game right now. I think that there is a real case maybe for if this season is a little bit slower for Rocco, holding him back to 2026.
Yeah, that's where I have him right now. Like, obviously, he's on my big board, and he's a name I'm familiar with. I haven't watched anything yet this year because I was kind of waiting for a game where he played more minutes, or one of these regular season games where he plays one of the other guys. We'll talk whether it's Malique Lewis or Henshall or Almansa or whoever. And so I haven't watched this season yet, but right now I a little bit more leaning to maybe this is a 2026 guy, especially when you consider, like you said, he's 18 until July 11th.
Yeah. And that's not to take away like from what he is long term. Like I again, like he's going to be an NBA player. I feel quite confident of that. It's just trying to figure out what the best pathway is for him at this point and where his game exactly is, because in the NBA now, if you can't play within your first 2 years, realistically, it gets really tricky. It gets really, really hard. NBA teams don't really have the time to deal with like serious, significant projects. So while I think Rocco has like significant tools to be an NBA player, I just worry that it might be a year away still. And that's
It's
not
okay.
a slight on him. It's just that he's 18 and he just turned 18. And like, I got to meet him at the Blitz, like awesome, like, had like so many great conversations with him. And, I think he has the right mentality and like sees who he is as a player as well. Like in the way that you want him, like he doesn't think he's like some offensive creator. You know what I mean? He doesn't think he's like a ball handler. He's just he's going to be a screener, a rim runner, a shot blocker, and a guy who hopefully continues to improve as a drop coverage defender. I think that there's a real shot that he can be a 2025, but it's going to take real growth throughout the course of the season. And I think there's a chance that will happen for sure, especially as he gets into, better condition, as he gets a better chance to play on the ankle that, again, he's had like minor stuff, nothing remotely serious, to be clear. But like, for instance, he sat out the last 2 games of the Blitz, right, with a twisted ankle. I would like to see Rocco continue to grow and continue to like, I don't think there's any reason to speed up this timeline, I guess is my point. Yeah. Despite the fact that I definitely think he's going to play in the NBA.
Yep. I'm with it.
Next, I will ask you, I had an agent text me yesterday and ask me to rank the 6 NBL prospects.
Okay.
I will ask you, who is 3rd for you?
After those 2?
After those 2.
So our options are Henshall, Almansa, Lewis. Who am I forgetting?
Lachie Olbrich.
Oh, yeah. Olbrich. Love Lachie. He had a good game the other day. He had double-double, right?
Yeah, he's good. Lachie's a good player.
Lachie is good. Okay. I'm going to go Ben Henshall, and I'll just start my Ben Henshall campaign right now.
So for what it's worth, to be clear, I also had Henshall 3rd.
Okay. We'll talk about the other guys. I actually really like Malique Lewis, but Henshall is just really interesting to me. Did you see the shots he made in that game the other night? Like, they were ridiculous, Sam. Pull up transition 3, step back 3 off a ball screen, step back on the baseline, and then I can't remember the third one. I think it was a floater in the lane or something like that. Like, it just all 4 level of difficulty. He made some rough passing decisions, but I do think he can pass little. He's got to get.
So like, to me, I thought the passing was what really stood out to me on, what was that, Friday night?
Yeah, no, I think he had really good what he did a good job of is Bryce Cotton was hot, and he did a really good job finding him when he needed to.
Totally.
He had a couple where he got in the lane and he had wide open guys on the wing, and I thought he didn't see those as well as he should. But there was a lot of really, like, that's a little bit nitpicky.
Yeah, look, he had 10 points and 7 assists, right?
Yeah.
Like he played 20 minutes. He was outstanding, I thought, in that game. The thing with Henshall is that he's a very creative basketball mind. You can see it in the way that he plays. Like, he has this great feel for how to get guys on his hip to keep them in jail. And he has this great feel in ball screens. He has this great feel for getting into the mid-range and scoring and playmaking and things like that. But often I feel like he struggles to like kind of moderate the aggressiveness.
Sure.
I thought in this game, it was maybe the best I've seen him moderate the aggressiveness.
Yeah.
And like pick his spots and then like realize that Bryce is hot, get Bryce the ball, the ball, right? That's what really impressed me. And then I went back and watched his game, for the defensive side, because I was curious. I thought it was the best he's played defensively.
Okay. Interesting.
Like I thought that he knew exactly, and look, like he was really poor defensively last year, and he knows that even, right? But I thought, at the Blitz, we saw him take on tough assignments like Parker Jackson Cartwright. And in this game, I thought that he talked a little bit better. I thought that he very clearly was like aggressive and was on point rotationally in a way that, was hit or miss. Let's go with last season. So I think he has shown real growth. I do think for this Perth team, which is among the deepest teams in the league, it's probably going to be a moving target in terms of playing time to an extent. But it seems like he's ahead of Elijah Pepper right now, which is huge. It seems like he's really got a shot to continue to, rise up. Just turned 20 years old, I believe, in May or June, maybe. Definitely, to me, a real NBA prospect.
Yeah,
And
June 22nd.
Yeah, I would have him mocked right now at the very least. So top 60.
Yeah, no, he's a really interesting player, and it was good to see him come out with that first game and play the way he did, because I knew there were, you and I had talked, is he going to get the rotation minutes? How much playing time is he going to get? And, if he does, like you said, exactly what he did in that game, hopefully he keeps those minutes, maybe earns a few more, but I think he's really able to show his talent even in the minutes that he got in that game. And the defense has definitely taken a step forward. And so he just got to continue to grow and improve that. But that combination of ability to handle the ball, make shots, make tough shots, but also create for teammates is, really intriguing. And it's something I would assume NBA teams are really taking notice of, especially if he can balance it by being solid on the defensive end of the floor as well.
Yep. I think that is right. Next for me would be Almansa. The first thing you asked me about Almansa is he skinnier?
Yeah.
I
thought it stood out. I just was making sure I wasn't seeing things because I thought it really stood out.
No, he very clearly is like really thinned out, probably in an effort to improve the lateral ability and everything. He looks like a different kind of player to me right now. Just in terms of where he is physically, he is skinnier. He's moving better, I think, laterally. My issues with Izan last year were always that I felt like he got like his shoulders kind of up over his ankles and like feet a little bit defensively, and like didn't have great balance. And I thought he could get hit defensively in space, but I think he's just moving better right now than what he did last year. It's clear they've done some work there in terms of the defense in space a little bit. Look, they're not asking him to like switch out all the time onto perimeter players, right? But I do think he's going to have a really good year. I think he's been solid so far for Perth.
Yep.
Still like a little bit of a tweener physically because I don't think I buy the shot yet.
Yep.
But he can pass. He's a great finisher. He has great hands around the basket. The thing that he can do that I thought they struggled with a little bit with Alex Sarr last year was he's going to really be able to like short roll. Teams love to put two defenders on Bryce Cotton in ball screens. He's going to really be able to short roll and be that release valve for them that they lacked last season at times. And it wouldn't surprise me if we look up and Almansa ends up having maybe like a slightly more productive season, or like it'll just be like a little bit different, I think, than what Alex did. And I still think Alex is a better prospect long-term than what Almansa is, but it wouldn't stun me if Almansa ends up having a similar impact, if not like even slightly better in terms of their team success than what Sarr did last season.
Yeah, I think the short roll stuff is really important. I thought his touch has really shown through in the action I've seen so far this year with Perth. Obviously, he can pass. That's one of the big draws with Almansa. So, getting him in those short roll situations where he can either go to the little floater or read the weak side is really beneficial for him. I find myself asking, what do I want to see to really believe? I've always struggled with Almansa, even going back to last year. Some of my most heated conversations with other people in the space was how low I was on Almansa, because I can't quite see it. Is he a four? And now that he's lost weight, is he a 4-man that can't shoot but can really pass, but is going to be really versatile defensively? I don't think I always saw that versatility and that switchability. So it will be interesting, because I think now that he's slimmed down, he really has to lean into that, right? It's not going to be any sort of anchor of the defense or something like that. So can he provide that offensively? I don't think the shot's going to be there. He's been good from the free throw line so far. And then defensively, can he be, just disruptive and switchable and have that versatility?
Yep. The next guy that is worth talking about is Malique Lewis. It's been a bit of a slower start for Malique to this point. I think he is still like a draftable player for sure, but it feels like he's still kind of like getting his confidence and like getting his feet wet and get the lay of the land a little bit in the NBL compared to the G League last year. It took him some time in the G League, so I'm not wildly surprised by that, maybe is the way to put it. But the thing is that Malique is going to be like very, very, very essential for the Southeast Melbourne team, because the Southeast Melbourne team has a chance to be one of the worst defensive teams I've seen in a while. They're starting Derek Walton, Nathan Sobey, Joe Wieskamp, Matthew Hurt, and Jordy Hunter, none of whom are particularly good defenders. They need somebody with Malique's length, athleticism, ability to guard, like really to form two-way lineups. So I think Lewis is going to be a really important player for them down the road. It's just taking him some time to adjust. And I think it's almost worth checking in on him in like a month and seeing where it's kind of landed.
Yeah. So for people who aren't familiar, he played in the G League last year with the Mexico City Capitanes and then went over to Southeast Melbourne. Hasn't shot it well here to start. Shot it decent last year in the G League, 38% on over 3 attempts. He just hasn't found the shot yet. And that's obviously going to be huge for him. Really good wingspan. I think he has the potential to be a really good off the ball defender. Like he has a wingspan, low man rim protector type of player. In the NBL Blitz games, he had some nice drives to the rim that I was impressed by. That's something I want to just see him be able to rip and go, attack closeouts, those type of things. Obviously can cut an offensive rebound, but yeah, it'd be once he gets his feet wet and gets, a feel for it, I'll be interested to see if the jumper comes around and if the defense is as impactful as what I think it needs to be for him.
Last guy, Lachie Olbrich. Lachie Olbrich is somebody that I have had my eyes on for a while. I mentioned him a lot last year at the Blitz because he was outstanding at the Blitz last season. Had like a bit of a lesser impact throughout the regular season last year, but this year he's very much in Illawarra's rotation. I think he had like 12 points and 7 rebounds, 10 and 7, something
double
like
double.
that.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, you had a double in the first game?
I believe so. I don't think I'm wrong there. Yeah.
Yeah,
12,
no, you might.
Yeah, 12 and 11 in 20 minutes.
Yeah. He was really productive and really awesome in that game. I couldn't remember exactly what the numbers were, but again, I think real potential draftable player, very skilled, can dribble, can lead the break, has potential to shoot it, I think is where I'm at. I think he's a better shooter than Izan Almansa and probably a better bet to shoot than Almansa. It's just what is the position kind of for the NBA? He's always been one of those guys that strikes me more as a FIBA level player, as opposed a high level FIBA player, as opposed to an NBA guy, given the way the teams are going in the NBA, where they want rim runners, or if you're going to have the ball in your hands, I think Lachie projects to at his peak, your level has to be so fucking high to play in the NBA as a big man and have the ball in your hands. You have to have better skills with the ball than guards do and that wings do. And those guys are crazy good in the NBA. So that's where I'm at on Olbrich. I love him. I think he's a very real, he's going to play for the Boomers for a long time to me. He is a guy that has a real shot to play in the NBA. If you told me he's a backup center for a while in the way that Jock Lawndale figured it out later, I believe that, but I worry about what the defensive position is because he's smaller than Jock. He's probably 2 inches smaller than Jock, if you made me bet.
And these guys are sometimes hard to sell NBA teams on, to give them a chance on a guy who he plays so hard and he has a real understanding of the game and positioning and where to be. And one of my favorite things to watch guys do is set the weak side flare. So, actions happening on the strong side, whether it's a ball screen or a downhill drive or whatever, and the guy on the weak side goes and sets a flare for a teammate. I love the players that are willing to do that and he does stuff like that, or just understands positioning to get an offensive rebound or defense. He's going to be in the right spot with the right position. It's just, does he have enough size, or is the athleticism enough, or does he do those things enough to be productive as the level of competition would go up in the NBA. But he's really fun to watch. He's been extremely efficient, Sam, so far in the NBL, making shots. You talked about the skill level. So a player that's really fun to watch, definitely worth keeping an eye on all season, just to kind of see, does he show off some of the shooting? What's the defensive upside and position? Like you mentioned, definitely worth keeping a track of.
I totally agree. Okay. Let's dive in. Top 10 defenses in the NBA. So we're going to predict who we think will be the top 10 defenses based off of defensive rating for this upcoming NBA season. And maybe I'll just open this up to you. How did you go about compiling your list? How did you go about compiling, your group of teams that we wanted to talk about?
So I just went to, NBA.com, went to defensive rating, and I just started with the teams that I thought were going to repeat in the top 10, and then tried to pinpoint a couple teams who I wonder if they'll drop out, and a few teams that I think maybe could take the jump in to try to get to 10 teams.
So that's kind of what I did as well. I went through, I looked at the teams that were in the top 10 last season, and then I looked through and decided, which teams haven't gotten any better, which teams have gotten worse, which teams have added a lot defensively, and kind of went from there, right? I got a tier of, I would say 6 teams at the top that I think are like, I would be stunned if they are not top 10 defenses if these teams stay healthy. Like if these teams get reasonable health, it would be staggering to me if they don't finish in the top 10.
You had 6?
I had 6.
Okay, so I'm trying to. So I think I can say 4 of those. So I'll be interested who your other 2 are.
Yeah.
Wolves, Celtics, Magic, Thunder.
And then I had 2 more that I felt like pretty good about.
Okay.
And then I had like 2 spots where I want to have a discussion with you.
Okay.
Basically about this. So let's start at the top. The team that I had as most likely to be number 1 was Oklahoma City.
Yeah, same.
So why Oklahoma City at number 1? Oklahoma City had the number 4 defense last season. That was with rookie season Chet Holmgren, second year Jalen Williams, Josh Giddey in the rotation, who, I think Josh is an underrated player, but Josh is somebody who's not a particularly great defender. And they, instead of having Josh Giddey, have now replaced him with Alex Caruso, who is the best defensive guard on a permanent basis in the NBA. I'll hear out Drew Holiday.
Perimeter guard, yeah.
Yeah, like I think Alex does a better job of guarding perimeter players in the NBA probably than anybody else that I've watched recently. I think Alex is really, really good at defending guards and making their life miserable, and his anticipation is unbelievable. His hand-eye coordination just makes their life miserable. He fights through screens at a super high. Like Alex is just a stud on that end.
Yep.
And I would argue that he's not the most important defensive addition that Oklahoma City had.
Sure.
Getting Isaiah Hartenstein is a massive, massive jump for them because he solves a number of issues that they had last year defensively, even finishing in the top 4. Last year, they finished 29th in defensive rebounding rate.
Yeah. Yep.
Hartenstein is a big dude who can rebound the ball, and he's going to allow them to play bigger lineups with Chet Holmgren, which should allow Chet to be a more effective, impactful defensive rebounder coming across, not having to deal with like big, huge bodies all the time, kind of just moving him through.
Yeah.
On top of that, I don't want to say their rim protection was poor. It wasn't. Like they were fine on that end. But Hartenstein is one of the better rim protecting bigs. Like I had Hartenstein. I don't remember if I named him all defense, but I do remember getting very frustrated that he wasn't eligible for all defense because he didn't play 15 minutes per game enough last season.
Yeah.
Like he played enough minutes to where like he was at like 20 to 25 minutes a night or whatever. But on a permanent basis, he was unbelievable last season on defense. He was spectacular. I thought he is great in drop coverage. He has great positioning around the basket. He takes up a ton of space. He has good movement ability. Like he does everything incredibly well on that end. So we're going from the number 4 defense to adding this guy who is solving a lot of their issues that they had on the interior as it is. I think I would have them as my bet right now for the number 1 defense in the league.
Yeah, I mean, even if you have some guys miss some games, we talked about the Thunder having quite a bit of, I don't want to say luck, but fortune last year in terms of injuries to their guys. Their starting lineup played a lot of games, but you can overcome that now with a little bit more depth. And so you have so many options to guard the perimeter. Now you have the option to play this 2 big lineup of Chet and Hartenstein whenever you play against the Wolves, or if that's the best matchup for Jokic, putting, Isaiah on him and then letting Chet roam off the ball, all of that. So I just, I would understand anybody who doesn't like this, but like you said, whenever you have a team that was this good defensively already, a lot of young players that, theoretically are going to continue to improve, and then you add 2 of the better defenders in the association to the roster, it just makes sense to me.
And just to, use numbers or anything that we can here to showcase how serious these guys are on defense. I have the top 5 players in defensive impact according to the estimated plus minus model from Taylor Snar last season. Jonathan Isaac, number 1. No surprise. Jonathan Isaac's an incredible defender. Hartenstein, number 2. Alex Caruso, number 5.
Yeah.
Serious impact defender. Both of those guys are. Plus you get, Casey Wallace going from first year to second year. He's a great defender. The other thing worth saying with them is that they have very few like guys that I would call out and out poor defenders.
Okay. So I was just about to say that, like, even Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, those aren't guys that you're just like, oh, we can't serve, like, right? Like who's the defender?
I would say Isaiah is probably their worst defender. I think that you can move him. He's still not super strong.
Just because of physicality.
Yes. I would say he's the guy that like stands out where, okay, if we're picking a spot, it would probably be him. But like Kenrich Williams, for instance, pretty good defender. Jalen Williams, like sharp defender, not a great rim protector for a big, but does a good job taking charges and does a good job of, being strong and physical and moving his feet on the perimeter. I think they just have a lot of dudes that are really, really capable of taking on difficult matchups to where they aren't liabilities, right? Yeah. I honestly, like, Shea got defensive player of the year votes last year, or not votes. I think he got all defense votes last year. Shea on the ball can get hit occasionally. He's fantastic off the ball. He's like an unbelievable center fielder. That's where they really utilized him a lot last year. But, oh, by the way, getting Alex Caruso is going to allow him to play more off the ball in that like free safety role where he's outstanding and is unbelievable. He's like a very real plus defender, to be clear. Like I'm not saying he's not a good defender. He's a real like positive defender. It's just that there are times I feel like where you can occasionally catch him on the ball. And he's at the very least a league average on ball defender, if not slightly better than that. But he's worse than Lou Dort. He's worse than Caruso, right? Worse. I think he is a worse on-ball defender than J-Dub. Like if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is your 4th option as an on-ball defender, you're doing just fine.
Casey Wallace.
City. Yeah. Casey Wallace. He might be their 5th option. Jesus Christ. Now that I think about it, my goodness. Okay. So that's Oklahoma City. I would say that who was the second team that you had?
I was probably going to give the Wolves the benefit of the doubt here for number 2.
I was as well. Okay. That would be my bet as well. Minnesota was by far the best defense in the league last year. Like it wasn't really all that close. They had a 109 defensive rating last season. That is like really kind of ridiculous given where the rest of the league was last year.
Yeah. Is there
Look at like the second best team was 111.3 Orlando. That is a large difference. That is a 2 point per 100 possessions difference.
So like the only, like, I guess my question is, do we see regression in any way because of the potential guard situation? Like Mike Conley's going to be a year older, age 37 season. And I'm guessing you're going to lean into playing a lot of Rob Dillingham. Now we talked about like how this could be a good spot for Rob Dillingham because of the defensive infrastructure, is having to play him 20 minutes a night and what he's probably going to be on the defensive end as a rookie. Is it going to decrease though that much? Like my question is there any reason to think that this defense gets any worse? And I don't think there is. It's just, we think that the Thunder's is going to improve.
So I actually think there is reason to think this defense is going to get worse.
Okay.
Kyle Anderson is an awesome defender. Like that's the guy that.
Okay.
Like,
so there's the other change too. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Losing him is a real thing, in my opinion. Like having him being able to come off the bench and essentially like replacing him with Joe Ingles.
Yeah.
Can't really move all that well anymore.
Good call. Yep.
That's a real question to me. Now, like maybe Joe Ingles doesn't play and maybe it's Terrence Shannon Jr. I still think Terrence Shannon Jr. is probably going to be a slightly worse defender, if not decently worse than what Kyle Anderson was last year. The thing with Kyle Anderson, he played 23 minutes a night last year. You brought up communication when we talked about Alex Toohey. Yeah. Constantly talking. He is so smart. He is so long. He's 6'9" with a 7'3" wingspan. He takes up so much space. He's capable of guarding multiple positions. I think losing Kyle Anderson is a real, like, that's a real downgrade for them on defense. It's not like the worst thing in the world, but I do think that losing Kyle Anderson is not a help for them on defense.
Well, and if you're playing Terrence Shannon Jr., now you're playing two rookies off the bench. And in general, rookies are going to struggle on the defensive end. And again, like not to continue to crush Dillingham, but we've talked about this through the whole pre-draft process.
He was the worst defender in the draft class. We can just say it. That's what it was.
And he's extremely small. I think Terrence Shannon Jr. can be a really disruptive defender, like with his athleticism. Yep. I think you can see chase down blocks and second efforts and things like that, but may not lead to as much like just point of attack and defensive scheme and those type of things, especially as a rookie. So yeah, there's a chance it could take a step back. You still have Gobert, you still have Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I thought was really, really good for them last year. Obviously when Ant's motivated to be so, the two-way potential with what he can provide defensively along with his offense is still all there. But there are some things you can nitpick when we're talking about the top teams of the NBA on the defensive end.
So my assumption on how they go about it is they probably use Nickeil a few more minutes. Like he played like 23 minutes a night last year. I'm guessing that he might be up at like 26, 27 maybe, especially like, playing in the backcourt, right? Because if you look at the playoffs, he was still around like 23 or so, but that was with Kyle Anderson eating 15 minutes and Monte Morris being there for 7 minutes, right? I am almost wondering if they try to do some stuff where like they have Mike Conley or Anthony Edwards run the bench unit with Nickeil Alexander-Walker and, try to have Dillingham around, maybe 12 minutes a game, not 20.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So that would be my guess on how Minnesota does it. But look, Minnesota still has so they have Rudy Gobert, who's defensive player of the year, 4-time defensive player of the year now. They have Jaden McDaniels, who I would say is in the conversation for the best wing defenders in the NBA. Certainly. They're enormous. They take up a ton of space. It's really hard to score on the interior on them. They have Karl Towns, obviously, as well, who I think has improved on defense. Like, I want to say that about Karl. Like, he's not the sieve that he used to be. Playing him next to Rudy has really helped. And then I thought Nickeil Alexander-Walker was one of the most disruptive defenders I saw last year.
Yeah, he was good.
In the backcourt. He was fantastic. So That's a big group of players that I think are really, really excellent positive defenders. And I think that as you start to, get into year 3 of having Rudy Gobert, you really start to understand how to feed him bodies at the rim,
Sure.
basically,
Yeah,
in drop
yeah.
coverage in the regular season. And I think they've really figured that out. I would be surprised if they're not a top 5 defense, even with all of the things that we've talked about here.
Yeah.
Okay. The third team I had here was Orlando.
Same.
Okay. So Orlando was the number 3 defense in the NBA last season. They have brought in, actually Orlando was number 2. I'm sorry. Boston was number 3. Orlando was number 2 last year. They have brought in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who we think is an excellent, super positive defender and was borderline all defense last season. You are replacing, minutes with Joe Ingles and with, Gary Harris at times. And Gary Harris isn't a bad defender either, but KCP should be a real jump for them. The other thing I'm wondering about is, does Jonathan Isaac play more than 15 minutes a night this season? If that's the case, this defense should be right there with Oklahoma City and Minnesota. I think they have a chance to finish as the best defense in the league.
Yeah, this is a really, we talked about Jalen Suggs. So that backcourt duo is really good. Franz is a good defender. You mentioned Jonathan Isaac. Maybe this, how good they become maybe hinges on, Paolo and, how much of a step forward he takes. We always talk about Paolo and the offense and the efficiency and all of that. But, how can he be defensively? How much of an impact can he make with his size? And so Isaac, Suggs really leading the way, KCP. It's just, I don't know why they wouldn't be at least the same, if not better. And as you mentioned, they were already third last year or second last year. So third last year. So yeah, I felt pretty good about this one. Definitely in the top 4 teams. And I feel pretty good about them being third ahead, just a little bit of the team I assume we both have fourth.
If I was ranking defensive backcourts right now, or if
I was going to say, where would you have that?
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, here, I'll ask you this question first.
Okay.
Alex Caruso and Lou Dort, or Jalen Suggs and KCP?
Caruso and Dort.
I think I would also take Caruso and Dort, but it's very slight.
Yeah.
It's very, very slight to me. And Oklahoma City has other guys. They have Casey Wallace, they have Shea, they have J-Dub. Like, they have so many other options, right? So, like, that's why they're slightly ahead of Orlando here to me. But then you throw in Jonathan Isaac, who's this unbelievable, switchable defender who's gotten stronger as well, like, and was able to deal with center minutes in the playoffs last year. And then you have Franz Wagner, who we haven't talked about all that much yet. And Franz is a really positive, solid defender, excellent defensive player who is always in the right position and who can take on different matchups 2 through 4 pretty easily at 6'10", and just, again, takes up all that space. And I think Paulo has gotten better on defense. Like, we talked about that when we did the 24 and under list. I think Paulo has gotten way, way better on defense. Way better on defense.
And they have
he's not like a problem anymore. Like, in his rookie year, he was a real problem. I thought last year he was not a positive, like, hugely positive defender. I thought he was, like, basically neutral to me.
Yeah. And if they play Anthony Black this year, Anthony Black's a very good defender. And then they have a center rotation where, Wendell Carter Jr., Mo Wagner, and Bataze, like, they have options there at center as well, where that doesn't become an issue if somebody goes down to injury. Like, obviously they played Isaac at center as well. So, like, there's a depth situation here with the Magic as well, where, they have so many players. Like, you ask about the Thunder, who's the Magic rotation player who you're really worried? Like, is it Cole Anthony? Is that the one that stands out a little bit?
Cole plays hard, but he's
sure.
smaller.
He's
right?
small.
Doesn't have long arms.
Jet Howard, if he's in the rotation.
Yeah, and last year it was Joe Ingles. Like, you could hit Joe Ingles, like, fairly regularly, and they had Isaac kind of protecting him a lot of the time in the back. So Yeah, like they've removed Ingles. They've slid Gary Harris down into like the Ingles role, and they're adding KCP, who's like a fantastic, probably top 10 perimeter defender in the league. So it's a big jump for them. I think they will be better on defense this year marginally than they were last year.
Sure.
Okay. Number 4 for me.
Uh-oh.
I have gone with
we're about to do something here. I can tell by the look on your face.
I've gone with Memphis.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So why Memphis? Memphis in the years where they were healthy
Mm-hmm.
in 2022 and 2023, they were number 2 defensively in 2023. They were number 4 defensively in 2022. Last season, where they dealt with all of that bullshit injury-wise, they were still 12th on defense. Defense was not the problem for them. They were awesome on defense. And that is with Jaren missing 16 games and Desmond Bane missing 40 games and Vince Williams missing 30 and Marcus Smart missing 60, right? So they were top 4 in defense in 2022 and 2023. And since those 2 years, they have added Vince Williams and Marcus Smart. Now, what they have removed from that is Steven Adams.
And Dylan Brooks.
I think that Vince Williams is going to be just as good as Dylan Brooks. I'm not as worried about that. I think Edey, if you work around him as a rim protector with his physicality, his strength, his length, I think he will not be as good as Steven Adams because he is not as mobile as Steven Adams. He is not as capable of running different coverages as Steven Adams is. But I think around the basket, particularly, Edey in the regular season will be very close to as valuable.
So to be clear, I was going to have the Grizzlies in my top 10, not quite this high. And I think it was like, until I see that Edey can do that, I guess I was a little more hesitant to bring them back to this level.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, I think that was it. And I think it's fair to wonder about a rookie center. I realize he's massive. I realize he played a lot of minutes in college. I get it. I realize they have other options at the center position, but like, I just wanted to see it, I guess, before I can fully buy into it. But I'm cool. Like, I'm cool. Kind of, you bring up a good point that whenever this team was healthy, they were a top 5 defense before last year and all the injuries.
And they've added Marcus Smart to that is the big thing.
Sure.
Like, if we think Vince and Dylan are like for like in some way, and I think they are, to be honest with you, I think Vince Williams is a fucking outstanding defender.
No, he is.
Like, he is everywhere. He is so aggressive on ball handlers. He's strong. He can deal with wings. Like, Vince is a real defender. And he plays so hard. But man, Jaren Jackson held this defense up incredibly well last year, basically by himself.
Yeah, with a
like,
crazy
if I remember
offensive load as well, like a crazy offensive load, Sam, as well. He was.
I think I put him all defense, if I remember correctly, and I actually think I got some hate for it. But I put him all defense because I was like, oh my God, like, are you watching this Grizzlies team? They have guys coming in and out of the lineup every single night, and they're still 12th in defense. Yeah. They were 10th up until like late in the season, if I remember correctly. Like, it was crazy the load he had to manage in order to figure it out. Yeah, like people will. So like Alex in the comments brings up, his defense fell off a cliff last year from 3.5 to 0.8 DPM. That's all like the situation around him, in my opinion. That's not him. That is, he had multiple guys coming in around him. Jaren didn't get worse on defense. Like, Jaren was the piece that held them together. Like, how do you guys think they had the 12th best defense in the league with all these guys coming in and out of the lineup? And, what, like, nobody other than Jaren and Santi played 60 games. That's Jaren.
That's a crazy stat. That's
Jaren.
That's as crazy as the 33 total players played. Is only 5 guys played more than 50 games for this team.
Only 8 guys played more than 40 games last season.
This is amazing.
How do you guys think that they finished 12th in defense?
Well,
I think Taylor Jenkins is a good defensive coach, but that's Jaren.
I think that's
Jaren being the centerpiece of it.
And I think the bigger piece of that, again, is the offensive load that he had to take. And I know we talked about how we're kind of excited about that. And, how does that play off of Ja and Desmond and all of that? But we've seen it with countless players that when they have to take a bigger offensive load, the defense maybe isn't the same. And so even if you want to say he wasn't expending as much energy on that end, he's not going to have to be that player offensively this year with those two guys back in the fold. And so, yeah, this is a great swing. This is a great call. I wasn't willing to bump them this high. Again, I had them in the top 10, but yeah, it's a compelling argument.
Okay. Number 5. I had Cleveland.
Interesting. Okay. So this will be a fun conversation.
So why Cleveland? Because since Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen have been there, Cleveland has consistently been a monster defensive basketball team. It is really freaking hard to score on those two on the interior combined. Last season, they finished 6th in defense. The year before, they finished 1st in defense. The year before that, they finished 7th in defense. Evan Mobley played, I believe, 50 games last season, something in that ballpark.
Exactly.
Played exactly 50 games last season. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, they both missed 25 to 30 games last season. I kind of think that having Mobley and Allen back together, that team is just kind of automatically a top 7 defense to me.
So I kind of looked at it as a different way, as is this a team to potentially fall out of the top 10?
Oh, give me a take. I love it.
I just wonder, new coaching staff where you're going to emphasize offense.
Sure.
And so it's JB was there for the defense and we're going to play these 2 bigs and all of that. I'm not trying to critique the hire or the coaching decision, but I just wondered hey, do we emphasize something different? You are still having to play 2 small guards together. And is there a chance that maybe the emphasis goes to the other end of the floor and we see a slight drop on the defensive end? I'm not saying they're going to go to 20th. I'm just hey, maybe is this a team that finished in the top 10 last year that could potentially slide out of the top 10?
So look, Kenny Atkinson was with Brooklyn through all of their rebuild.
Okay.
Right.
Sure.
That, I think we can throw away his first 4 years there.
Fair.
Because they won 20 games and it was after the Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett deal. And it was really, really hard. Right.
Yeah, sure.
The last 2 years that Kenny Atkinson was in Brooklyn was the 42 and 40 year where D'Angelo it's Karis LeVert kind of went nuts in the playoffs against Philly, but they still only won 1 game. Right. They had Jarrett Allen there as well. That team finished 14th in defense. And then the 2019-20 team with Kyrie, basically, that was really their only guy, but Kyrie only played 20 games that year. They went 35 and 37. Kevin Durant was out after, his Achilles injury in the playoffs with Golden State. That team still finished 9th in defense because Jarrett Allen was there.
Okay.
Kenny Atkinson knows how to use Jarrett Allen really, really well. Now you have Evan Mobley with him. I think Jarrett Allen is the most underappreciated defender in the league. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
Point blank. I had him again on my all defense team last year. I think that we consistently continue to underrate what his impact is. Every single time he's on the court now, the defense is awesome.
Yeah.
He has been on this Cavs team now with Darius Garland and with, Donovan Mitchell now. And Donovan, I thought, was pretty solid defensively for stretches last season, especially early in the season where they really kind of needed him to be solid on that end. But like he has held up these defenses at a super high level with small guards, man. And it doesn't matter. He's just really impactful around the basket, and he's excellent in drop, and he's a great rim protector. Like, I think he is just an awesome defensive basketball player and gets way underappreciated. Like I've said throughout the time that they've been in Cleveland, that I think he is a more important defender to Cleveland than Evan Mobley is. And Mobley gets all the publicity because he blocks shots and is so versatile, and he does all the loud stuff. But I think Jared being so solid and steady on the back line is one of those things that just continually goes underrated, because he's also not a loud guy, right? Like he's a super, super quiet dude. Like he's never gonna, bring up, himself really in these conversations.
Sure. No, I still ended up with him in my top 10, not as high as this, but it was just a team. As I tried to pinpoint teams that could potentially fall out of the top 10. And so far, I mean, we have included a team that didn't finish in the top 10. So we're going to have at least one fall out, right? If we put one in that wasn't top 10 last year, the Grizzlies, then one that is going to fall out of it. I just wondered, like, hey, do we have a major emphasis in a different, the thing that keeps them is you play those guys together or you play them separate, and the defense is still going to be good because both of them, they can do it defensively together, or I think they both can anchor a defense whenever you play them apart. And so that's why it's just going to be really good.
Okay. Number 6 for me is Boston.
There we go.
And this is like the top tier to me. Like these are the 6 teams that I had. The reason I ended up bumping Boston down a couple of spots is because Kristaps is going to miss some real time to start the year, it seems like. And I thought their defense was it felt way more solid and steady and impactful when Kristaps was in there. And their backup center position and the guys they're going to use, Xavier Tillman, who I think Tillman's a great defender, but like Nimi Keita, Luke Cornett, I just wonder about those guys. If Porzingis was like in the lineup from day one and I felt like he was going to play 65 games, I would have them probably third.
Sure.
I would guess behind Oklahoma City and Minnesota. But that's the difference, I think, for me between having Kristaps early on and potentially not having Kristaps early on.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about rim protection with all of these teams, right? They all have it in some fashion with Chet and Rudy. And we just talked about with Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen and Jaren Jackson Jr. When the Celtics don't have Kristaps Porzingis, they just don't have quite the same level of that. So yeah, I mean, them being in this tier is fine with me. This is going to be a really interesting regular season for them. I wonder if I'm starting to overstate kind of, they won't care that much about the regular season, the Porzingis injury, all of that. Like I'm interested to see how they come out and play, how much of a championship hangover they have. I think if you see it, it's probably on the defensive end with them where maybe the rotations aren't as tight and all of that. I still just want to give Drew Holiday a shout out here. I think he's just such a Swiss Army knife in terms of his matchups. And I love the way that Joe Mazzulla uses him in that way.
And here's the crazy thing with Boston's numbers. Like if I was a Boston fan, this is the case I would make, saying we're wrong and they're going to be a top 3 defense as opposed to a top 6 defense. Right. Which, at the end of the day, when we're talking about the best offense in the league, it really is just all in the margins. Right.
Sure.
But, they were slightly better on defense without Kristaps last season.
Okay. Interesting.
My theory was that the minutes without Kristaps and without Al Horford would be the real problem, right? But in the minutes and they played 1,100 of these minutes without Kristaps and Al Horford, they still had a 110.7 defensive rating.
Wow.
In those minutes. It really might just be that, by the way, in the conversation we talked about with like elite guard play on the perimeter, Derek White and Drew Holiday certainly belong in the conversation along with KCP and Jalen Suggs with Orlando, and certainly all the Oklahoma City defenders, Alex Caruso, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort, J-Dub, Kaysen, etc. Derek White and Drew Holiday are both unbelievable on defense. Absolutely unbelievable. So having those guys on the perimeter, plus good defenders in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, both of whom are fantastic on the ball. I think Jason does a great job off the ball as well. having all of those guys, it just really, really helps lift the tide anyway. And maybe it allows them just to have a defensive infrastructure where as long as you have a big body on the interior, it makes it work.
And so that's what I was going to bring. Like the Celtics have all of those, Drew can obviously scale up and down. Then you have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Real quickly back to the Cavs. I think maybe that's where I undervalue them or worry about them is like, who is that guy for them, right? Outside of Okoro is who guards that wing spot outside of Okoro. So.
Yep. No, I think that's a really, really fair point there. But yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, maybe Boston is just so good on defense that it doesn't totally matter.
Yeah.
And look, to me, that's the end of a tier, though. Like those are your 6.
And then you have 2 in the next one. Is that what you said?
I have 2 in the next group here.
Can I guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
Knicks and Rockets.
No, so it wasn't Rockets,
Okay.
but Knicks are in here. The team I have is Miami.
Okay. Yep. They were in the next group for me. So.
Yeah, so I had Miami 7th. And Miami finished 5th in defense last year. To me, it really is just like you have Bam Adebayo and Eric Spoelstra. And Spo is so good at finding those different matchups and finding those different ways to compete and contend and do everything he can, right? Finding different like times to blitz, finding different times to play and drop, finding different times to play zone coverages, right? And the guy who makes all of that work is Bam, because Bam is the most versatile, maybe big defender in the league, can switch out onto guards very capably, can defend on the interior well, can do any number of things, right? So having that like versatile chess piece is huge. And then Spo is unbelievable. It's just kind of hard for me to think that a team with that duo plus Jimmy Butler, really Jimmy is the key, probably doesn't finish in the top 10. They finished 9th in 2023. They finished 5th in 2022. They finished 7th in 2021, 11th in 2020, like 6th in 2019, right? This is just a team where their consistency defensively has been so abundantly clear that it's hard for me to not bet on them being a top 10 defense.
Yeah, since 15-16, they've only finished outside the top 10 once, and they finished 11th that year. So I think where this was another team where I had like, hey, maybe this is a team that falls outside the top 10 and we get a new team in. And I think for me, it's like you look up and down the roster and it's like, okay, I can make a case like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Kevin Love at 36 years old,
Terry Rozier,
Nikola Jovic, you can look at the roster and make the case it's not a top 10 defense, I guess, is where I was at. The counter is the points you made where you still have Spo, Bam, and Jimmy. And that makes up for whatever else is on the roster.
That's dead on to me. It's when you have that infrastructure, it's just really hard for me to buy you falling out of the top 10 entirely. The other guy that I want to bring up is Haywood Highsmith. Haywood Highsmith has developed into an awesome defensive basketball player.
Yeah.
Does such a good job guarding the most difficult player when he's out on the court. There's a reason that they really made an effort to re-sign him. I think he's at like 2 years, 12 million total. Really, really effective basketball player on the defensive end. Yeah. Next is the Knicks. So the Knicks go and they get Mikal Bridges. They now have Mikal and OG Anunoby, 2 of the 5 best wing defenders in the league. The reason that they're not in the top tier to me is Mitchell Robinson's health and their questionable depth behind that. The fact that they have, though, OG, Mikal, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, like Deuce McBride, they have so many different options there. I do think that at the end of the day, they probably will end up right around that top 10 mark. We have them 8th, so realistically could be anywhere, but they have so much defensive talent plus Tom Thibodeau to where I would think that they have a very strong chance to finish in the top 10.
Where would you have them if they had found a way to keep iHeart?
Top 2 or 3.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the defense. It's the interior defensive question to me, given Mitch's injury history.
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. Like that's where, we don't need to go into it again. We've talked about it multiple times. We talked about it with Andrew last episode, so we don't have to dive into it. The wing defense is awesome. I had them a little bit higher than this if I was just ranking them on my own, but I would love to have them higher. I just can't get there with some of my questions around the center spot, especially with Mitchell Robinson's if Mitchell Robinson's healthy, I feel pretty good about it.
Oh, if Mitch plays 65 games, they're going to finish in the top 5 or 6, I think.
Yeah. And then the other thing, I hear this a lot with them playing small. I see a lot of people talking about OG actually guarding the 5, like matching with the 5 whenever they go small. So he offers that real versatility. Even if Julius is the quote unquote 5, it's OG that may take those matchups and allow Julius to stay with his more, quote unquote normal matchups or whatever. So it will be interesting how those lineups work if Tibbs does actually go small this year, like a lot of people have said, or I guess he himself has mentioned playing Julius at the 5.
Yep. Okay. I have a group of 6 teams for the final 2 spots.
Okay.
The team I had 9th is Houston.
Okay. Yep. That was my last team that I definitely wanted in the top 10.
Okay. So I had Houston at 9th.
Okay.
Houston still has Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, both of whom are terrific perimeter defenders. They have Amen Thompson, hopefully stepping into a bigger role in year 2, right?
Yep.
Amen, I think, has a chance to be a defensive player of the year candidate, point blank.
Very good on that end.
The 2 big additions that they're going to get. First, Tari Eason only played 22 games last year. Tari Eason is a fantastic defender.
Yep.
Absolutely fantastic defender. And is switchable, is strong, is long, is physical, all of that. The second one is Steven Adams at the big position. I would like to see how Steven looks, maybe. Steven Adams is exceptionally professional, and I would imagine he's going to be fine coming back from this injury and everything, especially given that he's going to be playing, probably 20 minutes a night as opposed to 30 minutes a night in Memphis at times. I would think that he will be okay and be able to play through the season. I just would like to see it maybe before we go with this. Ime Udoka has a great track record defensively through his 2 years now in Boston, in Houston. I think Houston has a real chance to be a top 10 defense. It's kind of where I'm at.
I'm with you. And to go through the same, test thing that we've done with other teams, who's the big negative defenders that are going to be in the rotation?
Yeah. So Jalen Green would be one. I think Jabari's gotten way better on defense already. I think Jabari was pretty solid he wasn't I saw some people throw him into the all defense conversation. He wasn't anywhere near that for me. He was a really solid defender.
Yep.
There are teams that will hit Şengün on defense for sure.
Cam. I know people have questions about Cam's defense.
Whitmore, you can certainly hit off the ball. I think that, on the ball, he's gotten better. He's gotten more engaged. I think that teams are going to be able to hit Reed way more than what, the general consensus is. Reed's
small.
Reed is a great defensive playmaker. His hands are unbelievable. Reed is a bit of a space cadet at times off the ball where he's loses track a little bit. And then on the ball, he's just small, right?
Yep.
So I would say probably Reed would be the one that worries me most.
But
look, they have more guys that you can target, I guess, than some of the top teams, is why I ended up with them a little bit lower.
That's why I wanted to ask this, because they may not have the top end defensive talent in terms of all.
Look, I think Amen is that, but
not
I might be
in year 2 though. He's not okay.
I think Amen is really special.
I think he will be too. I don't know that he's there yet. I guess every other, I don't know. We haven't gone. Yeah. Does every other team have a all first team, all NBA defensive level player? I think so. Yeah.
There are a couple teams. Above them.
Yeah. Every team above them has one of those guys
for sure.
Yeah. And so again, I'm not there with a min yet. If you are, that's fine. my point was the ceiling isn't quite as high, and there's a little bit more of a floor with the Rockets in terms of people you can attack.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay. For the last spot, I'll just name the 5 teams.
I'm interested to see because I have 5 teams left that I at least thought about. So I'm interested to see how many we have the same.
So I automatically listed Denver and New Orleans because they were in the top 10 last year.
Same.
Right?
Yep.
San Antonio is worth a conversation.
Yep.
Because of Victor. I think the Bucks are worth a conversation because they had a serious amount of just shit happen last year, coaching and everything like that. And then the 76ers were the other team.
Same exact 5 teams, Sam.
Okay. So we ended up with 13 teams, it looks like, for 10 spots, right? Maybe 14 teams for 10 spots.
14.
And we had the same teams. The last team that I will note is the Clippers.
Okay.
The Clippers bringing in Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr., having Kawhi, obviously. I think they have a real chance to be a top 10 defense as well. They ended up really as like the 15th team for me. I would say I would have the Clippers ahead of Denver, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
But Denver finished in the top 10 last year, and I felt like it was worth noting them. Real quick thoughts on all these teams. I am disinclined to say San Antonio right now because I think they have too many holes that you can attack still.
Okay.
Victor is so good that they might just get there, but I ended up with them just like a slight spot lower. It wouldn't surprise me if they ended up in the top 10. They were right around a top 10 defense for the last 3 months of the year last year.
Yeah, I was looking up like post All-Star break, they were 12th.
Yep. While you're looking that up, where was Milwaukee post All-Star break last year? Basically underdog.
Milwaukee was 17th.
So what I worry about a little bit with Milwaukee, and look, Milwaukee loses Malik Beasley, who was quite poor on defense last year. They bring in, look, Gary Trent's not like a good defender. I would honestly say he's like, there are matchups where Gary is neutral. I wouldn't say he's typically a neutral. He playing a more consistent off-ball role where he's not asked to create as much. Maybe he gets to where he's like a solid neutral defender next season. They still have Giannis Antetokounmpo, Brook Lopez as your combo. I worry too much about the backcourt defense to get that into this conversation.
Yep. 100%. Who's taking those tough perimeter matchups? If you have a really good year from Trent Jr. on defense and maybe DeLon Wright off the bench, maybe that's what helps get them there is, somehow those guys are just able to do that.
That's right. The 76ers ended up in a spot where they signed just a lot of new bodies, as we talked about. I think Caleb Martin's a solid defender. I think Paul George is obviously an awesome defender, and they have Joel Embiid.
Yep.
The Sixers are probably the team I'm inclined to put here.
Okay.
At 10. New Orleans, though, has Herb Jones. They're kind of longer along the guard position now with DeJounte Murray there. They do lose that interior big, though.
Yeah.
With Jonas. And I think Jonas was a little bit better defensively in the regular season than what people think.
Yeah.
So it's now like, okay, we're either going small or we're going like Daniel Tice and Carlo Matkovic and Missy, right?
Yeah.
That feels a little bit worrisome to me for a top 10 defense.
I think I had pegged the Pelicans and the Nuggets as last year's top 10 teams to fall out of the top 10.
Yes.
I had the Grizzlies pegged as a team to come into it. I couldn't decide. Like, I was almost just like, you know what? I'm not going to put a cap on Victor, and I just want it to be the Spurs. Like, I'm just going to choose the Spurs because it's
honestly, they're a reasonable pick. The other team that like might be worth talking about here is Dallas, maybe.
I thought about them, but I'm like, I was trying to figure out what the growth was. Lively in they didn't have Gafford all of last year. I mean, like they didn't have him for the full season or PJ. Yep. Growth from Lively.
And
then you think that Grimes, Clay, and Najee are better than what you got defensively from
Derek
Derek Jones Jr., and I'm missing one. Somebody else.
Yeah. So Dallas last year was post All-Star break defensive rating. They were 13th, right? Like, so they were right around the mark. They were
Tim Hardaway Jr. Tim Hardaway Jr. is the other name that I wasn't getting there.
They were a point off the mark in defensive rating post All-Star break, right? Like they were fairly close to this conversation. They were obviously quite good in the playoffs defensively as well. Worth a conversation to me. They were 5th in defensive rating in the playoffs. You know, Orlando, Oklahoma City, Boston, New Orleans were all ahead of them. I can see a world where Dallas is in this conversation, but to me, it's the 76ers or San Antonio. And I'm going to say the 76ers because I just think that the Paul George, Caleb Martin kind of combo on the wing should be able to take on tough matchups. Obviously, still have Joel on the interior, who is a great drop coverage defender around the basket. I think that's where I'm at.
Okay, I'll go the Spurs, and we'll put Taco Bell on it.
I love it. Let's do it.
Perfect.
Taco Bell, or maybe a better meal in Vegas next year.
The same meal we had in Vegas last year.
What, Haleo's? Is that where we went?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was
okay,
very good.
So Oklahoma City, Minnesota, Orlando, Memphis, Cleveland, Boston, Miami, New York, and then Houston, and a switch up of either San Antonio or the 76ers. Okay. Bryce, do you know what time it is?
It's trivia time, baby.
It's trivia time. That means we bring on good friend of the program,
Andrew
Claudio is here.
What up? What up, fellas? Sorry I'm late. I was hooping.
Like,
Well,
really hooping? Like actually hooping?
No, it's quite literally just what my hat says. That's all. Sorry for those who are listening to this later. I have no idea what my hat is saying, but yes.
Well,
I got this hat for free, and I figured I'd wear it for the pod today.
Andrew was watching his beautiful New York Mets decide to hopefully make the playoffs.
Baseball's going on right now.
Yes, listen, I, in solidarity, chose to not even pay attention to the other game that I'm not supposed to give a single update about. So, yes, baseball's going on right now.
I would walk off right now.
By the way, I have no idea what's
I'm just
happening in
gonna
the
be
Mets
completely
game, to be
transparent.
clear.
They're up 2-1 in the 8th inning, which is why the transparency I'm going with is that I'm also still watching the Mets game. It is right here, as we do trivia. So I will. This may be the easiest win you have, Sam. In that
you gotta lock in.
You're playing with me watching another screen. I'll lock in as soon as the question's read. This is the deal tonight. So pennant race baseball. Who knew?
Yeah, quick 30-second update on the Mets and where we're at, Andrew. Just overall,
where they are in the race.
Yeah,
in the race right now. So
yeah.
I was at the game yesterday, and Citi Field was super loud. That's not what you asked, though. They're up a game and a half on the Braves. If they win tonight, they're up 2 games on the Braves for the last wild card spot. Also, if they win tonight, they're tied with the Diamondbacks for the 5th wild card, for the 5 seed, so the 2nd wild card spot. And the Diamondbacks lost. They're up 8-1 and lost today. So, and the Mets have the tiebreaker. So the last week of the season, which is this upcoming week, the Mets play the Braves 3 times starting on Tuesday.
Oh boy.
And that's what my week is, outside of all the work I'm going to do, obviously, for game theory and next film school and my job. But my life will be centered around the Mets playing meaningful games in Atlanta, which has not gone well in my history of watching the New York Mets play baseball. So we'll see if this can be a reversal of fortunes.
Oh boy, Andrew, we're all rooting for you now that the Pirates are dead. I feel like I can root for the Mets.
Yes, thank you.
For the Mets.
I appreciate that. that.
Okay, Bryce, it is trivia time.
Yep.
Give us the question.
We are looking for, on Sunday, September 22nd, the 10 most recent seasons, individual seasons, where a player played in 50 plus games, 1,000 plus minutes, and attempted 11 or more 3-point attempts per 36 minutes. We are looking for the 10 most recent individual seasons where a player played 50 plus games, at least 1,000 minutes. That was actually an important caveat, and attempted 11 or more 3-point attempts per 36 with no repeat names. So some of these guys did this more than once, obviously. I'll highlight that when it happens, but you can't just say like player X did it this season and this season and that season. Once we say the name, that player is out. The most recent seasons where this happened.
Okay. Andrew, do you want to go first? As always.
Sure. Steph Curry.
Steph Curry is one of these answers. Steph Curry did this in 23, 24, 22, 23, 21, 22, 2021. Yeah, Steph Curry does this a lot. I tried to eliminate him from the question, but I needed him in there to have a clean break in terms of seasons that we go back to. So he was part of the question. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, Damian Lillard is my bet.
Damian Lillard did this in 22-23. Sam gets a point. We are 2 for 2, each with a point here. Let me see if Dame did it. Dame did not make this list in any other season that we had to go back to.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised by that, honestly.
I won't give away how many seasons I had to go back to, but like obviously we're not talking his whole career. So
yeah.
Andrew.
James Harden.
James Harden did this in 1920 season. So now you guys know we at least go back to the 1920 season. That is the only season Harden did this of the last 5 years, though.
Huh. Interesting.
That makes sense, actually. Yeah. The Philly, Brooklyn, LA era. That's true. That makes sense. Yeah.
My next one is Klay Thompson.
Klay Thompson definitely did this in 22-23. We are 4 for 4. So this was one I was excited to do because I felt like there was some obvious names you guys would get, right? And so I was like, okay, this will be cool. You've gotten the 4 big names. Now it is going to be fun.
So,
they're not obscure names. I'm just saying, like, everybody in the chat, I'm sure, said Steph, Klay, Dame, probably James Harden. The other guys are shooters, but I'm just saying, like, it's a little tougher now.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say Jason Tatum next.
That is not one of these
Correct.
names.
Okay.
Okay. My next one, and this was like my last obvious one, is Buddy Hield.
Buddy Hield did do this. Had to go back to the 1920 season along with James Harden, though. But he did do it that season. So we are now, I think this is the first time we have done this where Sam has taken a lead. Sam is up 3-2. For reference, Tatum in 22-23 attempted 9 3-point attempts per 36. So
that's it.
Yeah.
What did he attempt last season, if you don't mind me asking?
Jason Tatum averaged 8.3 per 36. And I just want to continue to emphasize we are doing per 36.
Per 36, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Luka
is not on this list.
I'm way off on this. Wow.
That is an interesting guess. Let me pull Luka's numbers as Sam thinks about his next one. Per 36, Luka was at 10.2 this past season. That's not a bad guess, Andrew. Not a bad guess.
I knew his volume was high, but he per 36 is what's throwing me off.
He plays so many minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So I was going to say Donovan Mitchell.
Donovan Mitchell is not on this list. Let me pull Donovan's numbers. As we continue down this past per 36, Donovan Mitchell had a 10.4 season his last year in Utah, Sam.
So 50 games, 1,000 minutes. So we're looking for shooters here. I
had to give the 1,000-minute caveat, or like there would have been some really obscure of guys who played like 53 games and 800 minutes, and all they did was shoot. You know, like So I had to get the 1,000-minute caveat takes out some of like super obscure names.
Yeah.
Like there's some big time shooters that you guys haven't said yet.
So
There's
then I'll start with the homer pick and say Dante DiVincenzo.
So Dante was actually the motivation for this trivia, but Dante is not on the list. Yeah.
That's gross. That's very gross.
Do I get a point for being the motivation though?
So I set out with Dante as the motivation, and he didn't hit the criteria. You want to know what he shot per 36 last year?
It's gonna be like 10.9, right?
Hit 10.8.
Oh my god.
Oh wow, that's sick.
I was
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
That's quite
All
sick.
right. I'll take
The guy I set out for the one I already have next week's trivia ready. The guy I set out for being the motivation for that one also isn't going to be in the top 10 of that list.
That's quite funny.
Yeah, it happens every time.
Great.
Every time.
Okay.
Okay.
My next guess is Desmond Bain.
Desmond Bain not on this list.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's one you guys definitely should have guessed by now. Desmond Bain, the 9. That was last year too, and he wouldn't have even counted because he only played 42 games. So 8.
That's his closest.
I mean, 9 is his closest in the criteria of games played in minutes. His closest is 8.3.
Okay.
Should have guessed by now. Man, Kevin Durant? No, he doesn't take that many. That was a bad guess.
Oh, I've got one.
Think like you have to think Gunners, and this is all they do. Is that officially your guess, Andrew?
Well,
I said a name. I thought it's like chess. Once you touch the piece, you have to move it. Yes, that was my guess.
I mean, there's an undo button when you play on the computer, but Kevin Durant.
If we're doing undo buttons, guess what? Every time I get it wrong, I'm hitting undo.
Okay. Kevin Durant is not on this list.
So my next, so you said like think all they do is shoot. My next one was Trey.
Trey is not on this list.
Wow. It's a good guess. I thought so at least. Sam.
Yeah. What was Trey?
Gunners, 3-point Gunners. Trey had a 9.6 season his second year in the league.
Man.
How about his former teammate, or I guess no, still teammate, Bogdanovich?
Not on this list.
Okay.
Oh gosh,
Gunners.
I can't spell Bogdanovich. Goodness gracious. I should be able to. I covered one for 3 years. Bogdan 9.6 last year. Not an awful guess.
Good one.
Multiple years of 9. That one's close.
So my next one is going to be, man, I don't know if this guy's played. I think he did in 2023. I'm going to say Simons.
Anthony Simons not on this list.
Man,
this is tough. Man. You said there's a name that we absolutely should have gotten by now?
Yeah. Yes, at least one. Like there's one that all this Simons is a really good guess, Sam. Every last 4 years, all over 9 attempts per 36. One of these guys is like known for like this dude shoots threes. And yeah.
Ray out. No, I'm kidding.
Doesn't go back that far.
Not that far. Okay. I'm guessing the Lakers coach is also not on this list.
No, he is not.
I will say, man, just shooters is what's throwing me off. Is it a trick question and Duncan Robinson is an answer?
Why is that? So this is the one I thought you guys should have got.
Oh, Duncan Robinson. Okay,
that's who I've been talking about. Duncan Robinson, 21-22.
Okay.
Is on this list.
You know what's throwing me off, Bryce? The recency of it, because like him being in and out of the rotation the last 2 years is what, But
okay.
The year you're talking about was when like either he had just re-signed with the Heat, and he was still in the rotation when they were like a 1 seed. So that's what's throwing me off. I'm literally going through last year without factoring in 2 years ago could be in play too.
So yeah, that's fair. Yeah, like I will help you guys out. 1920 was the furthest back it goes. Harden and Hield both did it that year. That's as far back as I had to go to get to this.
Okay.
So
I have some guesses. I'm ready. Let's do this. Okay, you're up, Sam.
One player did. Obviously, Curry did this last year. There's one other player that did this last season.
That we haven't said yet.
That you have not said yet. Correct.
Okay.
So 3.
Ray Murphy?
No.
I don't think his volume is high enough.
Yeah. This is fun. You guys are tied too.
I'm like really thinking like snipers. Like
This may be an awful guess,
Can't wait.
but Evan Fournier?
So Trey Murphy was at 9.5 last year. Sam,
That's a good guess, Sam.
Evan Fournier, not on the list.
Okay. I was thinking 2022, he set the Knicks record for threes in a season. So I didn't know if the volume was there.
Per 36. Hey, that's not a bad guess. Hey, he averaged 14 in 23, 20 in. Oh, this was just with the Knicks last year.
Yeah.
In his 3 games.
I was going to say, like, what's the minutes? Per 36, because it was 36 total minutes. Yeah.
So in 21-22, he averaged 9.5.
So that's the season I was thinking of. Wow,
Yeah,
so
not
more
a
than
bad guess.
Fournier on that volume.
D'Angelo Russell.
Good guess. Not on this list.
I
Man.
thought you nailed it. Someone who did it last year.
So here, I will help. Maybe this will help you guys out. D'Lo had, great guess, Sam, had a year where it was 10.7.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And a year there is 9.3. You guys are really like right around it. I didn't
We're
think
around the mark.
No, this is fun. We're
This is amazing.
yeah, I'm having fun with this one.
No more.
I have another random one, so I'm ready.
You need to no more star players on the list. The last 4 are
Yeah.
not like they're names that everybody's gonna know. I'm not like it's not just randos. One of them's gonna be tough. But not star players. So you're looking at guys maybe come off the bench, maybe not, but their goal is to shoot threes.
Ask questions later.
Yeah.
Max
One of these guys gets a lot of buckets.
Strus.
Max Strus, not on this list.
No, okay. I'm just gonna start thinking pale and minutes, like short minutes.
There it is.
Where I'm going.
Max Strus, not a bad guess. 21-22 with Miami, 10.
10. See, I'm
That's a good
right.
one.
I'm right there. We're right there, Sam.
All right. So the last one we did, we had a random name that came up, and I'm wondering if this name comes up again. Terry Rozier.
Terry Rozier, not on this list.
If he was on this list, no matter what the question was next week, my first guess was going to be Terry Rozier. Yeah.
8.7, his best season.
Wow, that surprises me. I would have guessed more.
Sam Hauser.
Not on this list.
Okay.
Good guess though. You would think he'd be on this list, right?
There's going to be a lot of gentlemen of his complexion that I'm about to just start naming. Okay.
10, 9.3, 9.6 for Sam.
Ooh, that's actually better than I thought. Well done.
So just another hint, there's only one of the final 4 players are the same complexion as Sam Hauser.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Okay. Did like fucking Jordan Poole do this last year?
You guys are so close. Jordan Poole did not do this last year.
Cam Thomas.
Cam Thomas.
I don't think he takes
Now
enough
I'm
threes.
just going in the spirit of
I don't think he
got
takes enough
shooters
threes.
on bad teams.
Jordan
you know?
Poole had multiple years of 9 or more.
Oh, I have a thought.
Whose turn is it?
It's
guys
I just said
mine
Cam
now.
Thomas. So
Yeah, Cam Thomas. Too much mid-range.
Oh, am I overthinking this? Maxey?
Tyrese Maxey not on this list.
Joe Harris.
Not on
That's
this
a
list.
good
Wow.
name.
Yeah,
God
man.
damn it. That was a good one too. Oh my goodness.
Maxey 7.8 last year. Joe Harris is a good call.
That's a great guess,
the
Andrew.
2021 season in Brooklyn. That's the year when after they made the trade and Joe Harris.
This is the most surprising one yet. You know what? 7.9 is his best year.
Really?
It's crazy.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
trying to think of I'm trying to think of schemes now that involve high level shooters.
I hope the chat has got the answers. I love when
I
love when we look after the fact and we're like, oh, the chat got
they
that.
got it. They got it hours ago. Yeah.
They got it 15 minutes ago.
So you said close with Jordan Poole. I'm trying to decide if you meant by team or by name.
Yeah, it could be either one. You both have said players who, man, it was like, man, I thought you were going somewhere with that one, but you missed the mark.
So I don't think there's anybody else team wise on the Warriors that would have made sense with Poole. I'm going to say Jordan Clarkson then.
Jordan Clarkson.
Well done.
There we go. Jordan Clarkson did this in 2021.
They were 1 seed that year.
Sam now has 4. Andrew, you're at 3. We're looking for 3. That takes away the 2021 season. Curry obviously did it because he does it all the time. Clarkson was the other player. So we are looking for one player that did this last year, one player that did it the year before. That player actually also did it in 21-22 with the third name we're looking for. So another player on this list did it 2 seasons. And this player shot a lot of threes this last year very well. He's not the
Oh, Ted Cruz.
what?
What's his name?
Yeah.
In
Grayson Allen.
Grayson Allen. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Great. What did you say?
He looks like Ted Cruz. Sorry.
He looks like Ted Cruz.
I thought somebody put you up to saying that on the
No,
pod. Like one of those things
sorry.
like, I will pay you
I
$100 to drop a
apologize.
random
That's
Ted
how I
Cruz
know. I'm
on
sorry.
Game Theory today. And I was like,
No. Sorry. I apologize. And they do not endorse what I said, but Grayson Allen. It's my guess.
Grayson Allen's not on this list.
What?
That-
It wasn't even right? Oh, man. Okay.
that was funny.
Okay, so my next one is going to be Malique Beasley.
Thank you, Malik
Ah, good one,
Beasley.
Sam. Mm.
Malik Beasley did this in 22-23 and 21-22. He actually didn't do it last year.
Funny thing, I was thinking last year.
I was thinking that too. Yeah. I thought he got
was-
too many minutes with the Bucks because he was starting for most of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we are down to 2 names, and Andrew has to get both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sam gets one more. He wins.
He
Do you have a
gets one more.
tiebreaker?
I do. I really would like to use it. And,
Okay.
Beasley was actually at 8.3 this year.
Huh,
But-
okay. Not that close.
Man.
Andrew, we have not named the
24. We haven't said this past year and the 2022 and the one that looks like
me.
like yeah like you. I'm going through my Rolodex of people that look like you in the NBA. I thought
There's a-
Grayson Allen was the one. Dang it.
I
this-
know my next pick.
There's an assistant coach on some team that looks a lot like me. He has the beard
Yeah?
and everything, but
Okay. Man.
this player does not look like me. I'm pretty sure he has a baby face.
I will
Oh,
say.
that kind of gave it to me, I think.
Yeah.
Oh wait, looks
You're gonna
like you,
lose.
but has a baby. I'm gonna lose. Okay.
He doesn't have facial hair, was my point.
I'll go Peyton Pritchard.
Not Peyton Pritchard. Sam, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to be honest. I did not think he played 1,000 minutes last year.
Okay.
And I was going to say this is a bit because in a
Yes.
previous trivia, I got this name.
This is who I thought you were going to whenever you
it-
said Terry Rozier. But you went.
No, I think it's going to be Sam Merrill.
It
it's
is
who
Sam
you're
Merrill. I
saying.
had him on the list of people that look like Bryce. Dang it. Ugh. Oh,
So
well.
yeah,
Sam-
so the reason I hadn't said Sam Merrill earlier, he came into my head, very early on. I didn't
assumed
think he played 1,000 minutes last year.
Same. Yeah,
barely
same.
1,069. Like it wasn't. It was really close. I left it at 1,000 minutes because I thought you guys would guess him because of previous episodes and all of that. When you said Sam Hauser, Andrew, I thought you were going Sam Merrill. So Merrill was the one that did it last year. 21-22 is the last name. This is the name I didn't think you guys would get. You want me to give it to you or
Yeah.
Ben McLemore?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have. We would have been here till next week.
Seriously, I would have named 100 names before Ben McLemore.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to give us that one for sure.
I gotta be honest. I thought Merrill didn't play. I was the same thing with minutes. I was close to saying him. It was like I'll go Hauser then Merrill. Then you said shot extremely well from 3, and I remember Grayson shot like 47% last year, and it threw me off the scent. So
McLemore must have just said, I'm just going to shoot a bunch of threes towards the end of his career, because every year it was 10 or more. He didn't play a ton of minutes, but yeah. Okay, so the tiebreaker was, which one of those players you think had the lowest percentage of those seasons? So here's the list.
Like the lowest 3-point percentage.
So Steph Curry did it 4 times in the criteria I gave. Sam Merrill, Klay Thompson, Malik Beasley did it twice. Damian Lillard, Ben McLemore, Duncan Robinson, Jordan Clarkson, James Harden, Buddy Hield. So the tiebreaker was going to be which player had the lowest percentage of said seasons.
Yeah, my guess on that would have been Clarkson.
Mine would have been Harden.
It was Clarkson at 34.7. Harden would have been second lowest. Yes.
Oh, all right.
So
bottom 2. I'll take it.
There you go.
We did well.
And Sam, you finally get a dub.
1-1 in trivia. There we go.
Let's go.
I like this. 1-1. Bryce, do you have anything else you have to get off your chest before we get out of here?
No, I honestly thought that was going to be easier. But if we had fun, that's all that matters.
You had fucking Ben McLemore on this list, and you're like, "Oh, I thought this was going to be easier."
Why did that take you guys so long? Goodness.
You had Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Damian Lillard, and James Harden.
You asked for more than those 4, though. You asked for 10.
Oh my goodness!
I think next week's is going to be easier, but now I just never know.
No, we have no idea. Andrew, tell the people where they can find Knicks Film School, everything you've got going on.
They can find me at Knicks Film School over there, but where I really want people to go is to Game Theory Sam V. You can find him on Twitter. You can find him on TikTok. You can find him on Instagram. This is the beautiful slide that I made to help you guys be reminded of where to go to find all of our social content. Again, Game Theory Sam V. That's where you'll find all of our bite-sized content and any updates on the show. Game Theory Sam V.
Okay, Andrew, I'm going to ask you to add that somewhere to the current slide that we have. So it just is up there for while we're talking.
You got it.
Yeah. Let's have that up at all times, because ADHD Sam always forgets to list those off at the top of the show. So let's just make sure they're on the screen at some point, because that'd be good. So I don't have to think about it.
Got it.
Andrew's the best. Go follow Andrew. Andrew also, shout out Mets Therapy. Let's go.
You can follow me on all those same places. Look for Mets Therapy AC, and I'm reacting to Mets games, which there's a runner at third and 2 outs in the 9th inning. I will be reacting one way or the other, depending on how this game ends. They're up 2-1. I need one more out. But yes, follow Mets Therapy if you want to get my immediate after Mets games thoughts, which hopefully tonight's a positive one.
Oh my God. Bryce, tell the people where they can find you as well.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter. Any content over there, NBA draft stuff coming, game breakdowns, all of that as we get into real draft scouting with games starting, and real NBA comes sooner than I realized. So Motor City Hoops on Twitter.
Go to The Athletic, get me employed over there. That is a valuable part of my situation. Go to all of those places that Andrew and Bryce said. Go to all of the Game Theory social channels. We'll have some stuff up. I'm sure Andrew will cut some stuff up in a fun way. Go to the YouTube channel, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie. If you are watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. That is super, super valuable to help get the show out there more. Next episode for us is the second part of the win total over unders. Robbie and I have already recorded that, so that'll go up at some point, probably on Wednesday or Thursday. Andrew and I will talk about that. But until next time, we'll talk soon.